In today's video, we are going to continue talking about what are some of those things that you need to put in place in order to be able to successfully overcome your long-term insomnia and sleep problems. Now, if you haven't yet seen the previous video I posted, then obviously I would suggest that you start there, because that was the first step that I talked about in order to really build up that plan for yourself so that you know how you can actually overcome your insomnia and sleep problems. If you're just watching bits and pieces, that often you're not able to actually create a better plan, a more sustainable plan. Now, when it comes to these videos, obviously what's important to bear in mind is that you really always have to start with a sleep assessment in some way. Without that sleep assessment, you might not actually really understand the root cause of your sleep problems and the root cause of your insomnia. So that's always the first step, and that's that word of warning. Even this video, if you're not actually starting to get to know your sleep in a proper way or sleep problems in a proper way, general education, just like I mentioned in the previous video, is not necessarily going to be helpful. So what's important is really start understanding where you're at, what the root cause of the sleep problems are, and then apply the appropriate tools and techniques that I will also mention in these videos. Now that we've covered that, and before we go into the big content of this part of sleep improvements, I wanted to welcome you back if you are a part of my community already. If you are brand new, then let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Beatrix Schmidt. I'm a sleep coach, a professional speaker, and the creator of the Sleep Skills for Life program, which is very much my way of combining all the knowledge and all the practical tools and techniques that I learned over many years since I started working with clients in order to help you to make sure that you develop those practicalities that work for you, hence sleep skills. So sleep is much more practical than most people think. It's not just about the science, but it's about how you can convert your knowledge and your science research or understanding or education into the practical things that work for you with the complexity of your sleep problem or insomnia. Without that connection, you're just generally educating yourself, and you're probably not going to see a sustainable outcome. And unfortunately, this is what I see in my practice all the time. People have educated themselves, but they just don't know how to convert that into successful outcomes. So now that we've covered that, one more thing to ask of you is, if you haven't yet subscribed, then hit that subscribe button below, hit that little bell as well so I can let you know when I post new videos. And if you have watched the video and you like the content, hit that like button below as well. So now that we covered that, let's really talk about this idea of sleep hygiene as the second part of the treatment plan when it comes to cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Now, obviously in this video, I'm going to talk about what some of those parts are, but I'll also talk about how I integrate them into my work with clients, or some of them how I choose not to integrate them into my client work. So when it comes to sleep hygiene, it's probably one of the most talked about part of sleep problems and even insomnia. I have seen many different things across the years. A lot of them often rinse and repeat the same kind of information, the 5 or 10 steps or a certain sequence of events when it comes to sleep hygiene. Again, when I speak to clients, a lot of the clients that I worked with have overeducated themselves about the perfection of sleep hygiene, but for some reason it's not actually delivered results. So again, this is where it's important. In its theory, sleep hygiene is a good thing, but often what I find in my practice is people end up perfectionalizing the whole thing. It often becomes a set of very regimented steps that they take. Often it comes with a lot of different concerns, fears, lack of understanding, a lot of misconceptions. And sometimes what I've also seen in my practice is when you have put in place certain ways of really approaching sleep hygiene, it can actually stop you improving. And this is unfortunately one of the things that I see in terms of general sleep education when it comes to sleep hygiene. If something hasn't worked, then that means that it might not actually truly be relevant to the root cause of your problem. Sleep hygiene, when it is appropriate, it will always deliver results. It will always work with who you are. It will work with the lifestyle, the environment you are in. It will work with some of those personality traits you have, because really good sleep hygiene works with you as a human being, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Now, before we go into some of these parts that I talk about, I wanted to break down some of those general things that you've already probably heard and what I therefore feel that it's missing. So when it comes to sleep hygiene, most of the general things are very physically driven. So these can be things like make sure you've got dark curtains, make sure that the temperature in the room is appropriate. Your bed linen should be a certain quality. Your bed, your pillows should be a certain quality to really work with creating that environment. Often you would see articles on what you should or shouldn't be eating, how long before you go to bed. So this is where you might see things about caffeine. You might see things about having a very late heavy meal. You might see things about sleep hygiene that relates to exercise, either the lack of or how you should put in exercise in order to help you. A lot of the time, sleep hygiene then expands into what we would call nesting behavior. So things like making sure that as you're approaching your bedtime, you are preparing your body a certain way to really calm and relax. Again, these are some of those misconceptions that I see in my practice. So these are just some of the things that cover sleep hygiene. There are lots of different things in it, and the way I use sleep hygiene, I don't actually refer to it as sleep hygiene because often it tends to refer to a lot of just physical things. So sleep hygiene meaning, are you cleaned and comfortable and you have all the environmental pieces in place? But when I come across clients who have not been able to overcome their sleep problems or insomnia, what's missing a lot of the times is the emotional and the mental part of sleep hygiene or preparation for sleep or evening routine, whichever part or whichever way you describe it. I often simply just describe it as preparation for sleep or evening routine. Whilst it is useful to sort of use sleep hygiene as a label, but what's most important is not what you call it, is that whether or not it is actually creating positive results. If you put a bunch of things in place, but you have not seen sleep improvements, then that most likely is going to mean that they might not be only applicable to your problem, or maybe it's just part of the combination of challenges or problems you have. So that's where we're really looking at it. A very effective, personalized, and really practical evening preparation, hence sleep hygiene, is what's really going to help your body and your mind to be able to transition into sleep and create good quality sleep. It's really just that simple. So instead of looking at sleep hygiene as very external things or very sort of physical things, the other part I integrate into working with clients when it comes to this idea of behavioral therapy or sleep retraining is the emotional and the mental parts. Just because your bedroom is perfectly designed and it's cool and it's dark and your bed is comfortable, it does not mean that you've dealt with what's going on for you emotionally and what's going on for you in your mind. This is where I see a lot where clients actually carry certain emotions to bed with them. These could be frustrations, anxiousness, nervousness, doubt, uncertainty. Many other different emotions can show up, especially when they're not able to fall asleep easily or they wake up in the middle of the night several times. So this is where those emotions rise up when you have not successfully been able to create good quality sleep. Sometimes these emotions can actually even start way before you climb into bed. Hence, really, does your evening preparation address those things and prevent those things to be carried into bed? Then we look at the mental part. Again, just like I mentioned in the previous video, general sleep education creates that knowledge. It creates your understanding of what you think is relevant. But again, sometimes over-education can actually lead to not knowing what works for you. It can lead to either doubt and then lead to certain thinking, certain patterns, whether or not you are maybe thinking about the future and concerned about what if you don't sleep well and how your day is going to be like, or maybe you look at the day before or the previous few hours and you think about the past. So when it comes to this idea of evening preparation for bed, all those parts, not just the physical, but the emotional and mental parts, also need to be addressed in order to be able to create a high amount of relaxation physically, emotionally, mentally. So when it comes to sleep hygiene, and that's why I don't really like to use the word hygiene for it in my practice, because it assumes that it's all external things. We've got to address the internal things. We've got to address some of those things that actually is playing out for you in different ways. Now, obviously, depending on the scale of your sleep problems and the root cause of your sleep problems, these combinations will be quite different. And I've talked about evening routine, bedtime routine in several videos before in different ways, either answering a client question or just sort of talking about parts of it. So there are different resources when it comes to this idea of the evening preparation that you can explore further on my YouTube channel and within my website and my blog as well. So as a recap, when you look at sleep hygiene or this idea of preparation for sleep, and you have long-term insomnia and sleep problems, what is most important is that you really look at what is playing out and what is not helped by some of those things that you have put in place. These can be tools, techniques, exercises, or simply materialistic things like curtains, bed, so on. If what feels like you've really looked at sleep hygiene in a proper way and you're not doing all those things that you're not supposed to, and you're still not able to enjoy good quality sleep, then the outcome of that is going to be that something's missing. It's really just that simple. And again, this is what I see in my practice all the time. Often when clients come to me, they have really worked through sleep hygiene. That's one of the first things often you will go through. But is it working? And that's one of the most important things to ask. And if it isn't working, then you need to go back to a practical sleep education that I mentioned in the previous video that can really figure out what is the missing parts that you're not necessarily applying or you're not necessarily putting in place. Now, obviously, I know that this video was a little bit on the general end. And again, this is why general advice, as I say, it's often quite challenging to put in place. So when it comes to your preparation for sleep, what you really got to ask yourself is which parts are working and which parts are not either yet working or they have not been effective. And that's a very good place to start in terms of building that self-awareness, building that sort of more practical education that I mentioned before, and really figure out what is a better way to approach this evening preparation, or if you want to call it sleep hygiene. When it comes to sleep hygiene, it's very much a core part of overcoming sleep problems and insomnia. So I integrate a lot of it into my practice, but I don't approach it in a general way. I really work with the person, look at what they've done and what they've tried, what's working, what's not working, and really looking at which bits are either missing, so we need to integrate them, or which bits are already there, but we just need to make them bigger and better and more effective. It doesn't mean that you have to throw away everything. It just means that you have to really understand what might be those things that you can improve upon and what you might need to add into the whole idea as well. So thank you so much for watching. When it comes to this idea of evening preparation, this is one of the main things I talk about in my practice. It's often more complex than superficial. There is no 5 steps to perfectionizing or creating a great sleep hygiene. It's really about figuring out what your set of things are. So moving forward, that's really what I invite you to do, is really look at you and your root cause of the problems. It will really help you to start finding that appropriate tool and technique or sequence of events that will really create good, consistent and long-term results. Now, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button below. Hit that little bell as well so I can let you know when I post new videos. And of course, if you have enjoyed and liked the content, the way I explain the difference in how I integrate this into my practice, then hit that like button below as well. And that way I know that what are some of the content that you really like to watch and what you're learning from.